My name is Linton Kwesi Johnson. I'm one of the founding trustees of the George Padmore Institute, and for my sins, I am the chairman of the board here at 198. On behalf of both organizations, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're grateful for this rare opportunity to have an audience with actress Dona Croll, doyenne of theatre, TV, film and radio, whose career spans nearly half a century. Nearly, not quite.
We have a chat after.
One more year and it's half a century.
Before I go any further, it's very nice to see Mr. Rudolph Walker.
Yes.
And as usual, it's always a pleasure to see Margaret Busby, the President of English Film. Dona's television credits include The Bill, Casualty, Desmond's Death in Paradise, EastEnders, Gimme Gimme Gimme, Holby City, and The Long Song. Her Shakespeare roles include Cleopatra in Antony and Cleopatra, Talawa Theatre Company, Mrs. Quickly in Henry V, Royal Shakespeare Company, Emilia in Othello, Greenwich Theatre, and the much-acclaimed character of John of Gaunt at the Globe Theatre. Her film credits include Hallelujah Anyhow, Eastern Promises, I don't know what kind of title it is, Kill, Kill, Faster, Faster.
Yeah, Kill, Kill, Faster. Which I've never seen.
Tula, The Revolt, and Mr. Malcolm's List. And she's also featured in many BBC radio productions. Dona's interlocutor is the distinguished actor, broadcaster, director, and writer, Burt Caesar. A veteran of the acting industry. He's a founder member of the Black Theatre Cooperative and a former associate director of the Royal Court Theatre. His CV is about this long. I won't go any further with it because tonight our focus is on Dona Croll. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dona Croll and Burt Caesar.
Good evening. May I extend that warm welcome, Linton, to brethren and sistren, gathered as we all are this evening to give flowers to the living legend that is Dona Croll. Now I'm sure you recognize these lines, Dona. The race is not for the swift, nor the battle for the strong, but for those who can endure. And what a career you've endured and are enduring, Dona. Full of grace, luminosity, and hard-won wisdom. So tonight, I am your conduit. Linton, call me what? Inter something?
Interlocutor.
One of them, yes. I am the interlocutor who will speak to Dona for about an hour, and at the end, there'll be a chance for you to give your flowers to Dona, hopefully with a question attached. Now, Dona, you are not long back from Jamaica.
Yes.
And you try to spend as much time as you can in that confounding island.
Yes.
I beg your pardon.
It's what Walcott called it.
But as a sort of an opening pose, let me ask you, what, if you had to answer or respond to the question, what is Jamaica to me? What would you say?
My attachment to Jamaica, I think, is an emotional one, because I'm aware that I was born there, although I was raised in England from the age of 4. I'm aware that my umbilical cord is buried under the mango tree in my grandfather's front yard. That's a sort of grounding that you can't ignore. And every time I go there, there's something I tap into which refreshes me, revigorates me to come back here and work.
But you always have to have the return. You could not live there all the time.
I will eventually. It's just that at the moment, because I'm in Montego Bay, I find it quite difficult. I miss my tribe in Jamaica. My tribe are my girlfriends here and the acting community. I love hanging out with actors and I haven't found them in Montego Bay. They're all in Kingston. So I need to spend more time. My friend Grace Kelly is here. She lives in Kingston. She's suffering. I'm going to give her my fan. Oh, no. Oh, no, have it. Have it. There's a window open.
Jamaica she come from?
See, I don't usually see Grace looking so
So
moist.
So starting out, Donna, I mean, if I had to, again, follow up by saying then, so you're in England from the age of 4.
Yeah.
And the 1960s, 70s, you're at primary school, grammar school, and you decide to become an actor. What were the inspirations? What gave you that kind of first gear to decide to become part of this crazy profession?
I can tell you directly, I was given the part of Bottom in A Midsummer Night's Dream, my first Shakespeare part. And it was an all-girls school, so you're playing boys and girls. And my headmistress quipped afterwards that mine was the best bottom she'd ever seen, and that perhaps I should think about joining the profession. And I said, don't be ridiculous. I was doing A-level English, French, German, Italian. I was going to work in Europe. I was going to be a European and speak all these languages and translate this and work at the Court of Human Rights and all the rest of it. And I thought, well, I like doing it, so let me give it a few years and see if it's any good. And if it isn't, I'll go back and do my languages. So my drama teacher took me to the drama school in Birmingham and said, she dragged me there and said, you must audition. And we planned what I was going to do for an audition. And then I had to audition for a grant. Grant? It's a lovely word. I don't have that anymore. And so my fees were paid and off I went to the drama school. And then I gave myself 5 years. If I'm working in 5 years, I'll stick with it. If I'm not working in 5 years, I'll go and do something else.
You know, one of the connections I'm seeing subliminally between Jamaica and you playing Bottom in A Midsummer Night's Dream is the language.
Yeah, I
There's
love
something
language.
about verse, about that heightened, elevated language, which isn't just Shakespearean. I mean, it goes back to the Greeks, it goes to Africa, it goes to the Caribbean, North America. But language, that must have been something which you felt.
Yes, I don't know where that came from, because in my parents' house there were several Bibles, and there was a book called The Bible as History, and then there was an encyclopedia. That was it. But there was a library at the bottom of the road, and we'd have the odd date at the seaside, but we never went on a holiday like people go to Spain, and we never did that. So in the holidays, I would go down to the library and read whatever books I wanted to read all day. And then I would take out 6 books or however many books I was allowed. I took them home, I read them in the evening. And then the next morning, I went back to the library, I read all day. And then I took out some more books and went home and read them. So I spent a good 3 or 4 summers doing just that. And just mostly as a distraction, because my mother never liked housework. She wasn't trained to do housework. And we were supposed to do it. But she would always defer. If I was reading a book, then I didn't have to do the housework. So that's why I did it. And also my mother, because she was brought up at a time when Jamaica was a colony, I think the teachers who were shipped out to the colonies were all Oxbridge people who were quite posh. But I can remember my mother quoting, "Where the bee sucks, there suck I," in a Cowslip's Belle I Lie from the Tempest, and also bits from Midsummer Night's Dream. So I just walked around saying this stuff, not realising it was Shakespeare. But then you go to school in England when you're 5 or 6, and my mother had taught me to read and write already. And I can remember the teacher saying, "Isn't she clever? She can read and isn't she clever?" Took me about 30 years to understand what the teacher actually meant. Isn't she clever for a black girl? But she never said that bit, so I grew up thinking I was clever. I must have been a right pain in the arse, because I really was quite sort of, I can do this, I can do that. You know, confidence, because of the way my mother had given me that start.
So that heritage to your mother is almost like, you know, one of the sort of inheritances of liberal imperialism. Because my father also, in St. Kitts, his head was full of poetry he had learned at school from these liberal imperialists. So really your kind of drive into the profession was through a very good teacher, an encouraging, inspiring teacher, yes?
Not just one teacher. The English teacher, the drama teacher, the headmistress, the school secretary, they all said it. And in fact, I met the school secretary a couple of years ago. She is the mother of Mark Gassis's partner. And she said, "Oh, we could all tell you had something special." And I thought, "Ooh." Because I can remember going on stage and just loving being bottom. It's playing. You know? It's playing, and I just loved play. So, yeah, it was all my teachers who encouraged it. Maybe I was really bad at French, English, and German.
So you faced the profession after drama school.
Yes.
I suppose drama school is a bit like learning to swim in a pool.
Yes.
And you come to the profession where it's the big sea with tidal waves and ripping tides. Tell us something about those first jobs you had. How they affected you, how you confronted them.
The very first job I had was at the Bush Theatre.
The old Bush Theatre.
The old Bush Theatre, above the pub in Shepherd's Bush. It was 1976, that very hot summer. There's no loo upstairs. If you wanted to use the loo, you went downstairs, round the outside of the pub, into the pub, back round again. But we did have a bucket if there were problems.
A pail.
And yeah, a pail, yeah. And we worked a la Mike Lee, because Sheila Kelly and Sarah Peer Anderson had worked with Mike Lee. And there was there's Michelle Austin in the house who's worked with Mike Lee a few times. It's about improvising and then putting a script together. And that was my very first introduction to a professional stage.
So it's like the actor as author, in a way.
And I earned 30 quid a week, and I was delirious. I'd never earned 30 quid. It's
and
great.
what did that give you in terms of your approach to acting as a career?
Well, it made me forget all the stuff I'd learned at drama school, and it really centred me on working with character and investing in character and understand. Because it's a new thing where people write out the backstory of their characters. That's not what I was taught at drama school. I was taught that through my first job. So that's where all of that comes from. All my working practice comes from that one show. Thank God I did it as my first show.
Can I butt in here and ask you, where did you go to drama school?
I went to Birmingham Theatre School because I'm from Birmingham. And I had a boyfriend called Ked, and I wouldn't leave him. And then as soon as I started working in the business, he left me.
So what about the next job? Did you feel you could take that strength, that
Yes.
newly learned strength,
Yes.
to your next job?
Yes, my next job was the Crucible Theatre, where we did the Hiawatha Christmas show. The one that was improvised. So I did 2 improvised shows, so my very first 2 engagements. And I can't remember what the third one was.
What was special about Hiawatha?
Hiawatha sort of tapped into my. It's a thing I have about theatre as church, because I think the experience you get in a theatre, where they say that the audience's heartbeat all comes together as one, and then the the give and take you get between the audience and the players. So no two shows are ever the same. You get different vibes every night. And also as an actor, sometimes you can just fly and have an out-of-body experience, the kind of experiences we have in our churches. But this particular play, we started off, it was in the studio at the Crucible in Sheffield. We started off standing on a sort of plinth around the studio. And I don't know how we did this every night, but we all started speaking in unison. And
well, you stood in silence.
we stood in silence.
In front of the audience.
Yeah, and sometimes the audience were, oh, what's going on? Nothing's happened, the lights are off, and that. And we just had to hold our concentration with each other. And then somehow we all breathed and spoke at the same time. Because the first part of the show was us speaking chorally. And we did that every night. And it was different every night because the audience was different every night. And it's an extraordinary thing. I've never, ever done that again in any show I've done. It was a great experience. I remember it.
You know, it's always a kind of reality check to talk about our work as show business. But really, it's a sacred pursuit that we undergo sometimes. You talk about the link with the audience, that kind of communion, which is like being in church. There is always a sacred element, isn't there, to our work in theatre?
I think so. Although Joe Marcel says, show has 4 letters, business has 8. He said, look towards the business, yeah. So what are you getting at, Bert?
Well, your mother was a preacher. Theatre is church.
My mother is an ordained minister. She's a reverend. She can hatch, match, and dispatch. Although she doesn't work anymore. My father was a lay preacher and a pastor, but he was self-ordained. My mother's had it done properly through.
But is that very much part of your kind of how you live life?
No.
Womek.
Because it's very difficult. I don't know. When I got to the age of 14, I really felt I was being indoctrinated, because every story I wrote was, somebody made a sin and then they had to be redeemed. And I thought, this is just Jesus' story with a different coat on. I'm writing the same things. I've got to get it out of my head to free up my mind to write, lots of other things. But my parents took me to church. I went to church morning, Sunday school, and evening on a Sunday. And on a Thursday night, they had prayer meeting in the front room where the phone was. And sometimes my friends would ring and the phone would go and someone would tiptoe out of the front room and find me in the dining room round the back, because I wouldn't do prayer meeting. I'm doing my homework, allegedly. And they said, there's a phone call for you. So I'd go into the front room and there were all these people on their knees with their bums there on the settee and mumbling and praying and things. I had to step over people's legs to get to the phone and say, I can't talk. My mum's having a prayer meeting. And it's a scene I've always wanted to put in a movie. I just think it's hilarious.
Do you ever carry that feeling with some of us who didn't even have that kind of very pious home life, of being a sinner, of being bad?
Oh, constantly. Constantly. I was always a bad girl. But my mum always backed me, no matter how bad I was. My mother backed me, because she was a bad girl too. So I think she became a Christian to stop her being a bad girl.
So you're in the profession. When we're working, we look to kind of idols. We look to people we admire, people who are giving us a kind of a lodestar path forward. I'm going to mention one name, and I want you to riff on it, riff on her. Mona Hammond.
Oh man, Mona Hammond. Somehow I found myself in London, and I found myself at the the Young Vic Theatre, working with Norman Beaton's company. and Mona Hammond was in the company, and Pamela Obermeyer was in the company, George Harris, Jason Rose, I can't remember.
Claire Sylvester was Claire?
No, Claire wasn't in it. The man who used to sing like...
Lon Sutton?
Used to sing like Nat King Cole. Him, anyway. But Mona Hammond, I was very young, still wet behind the ears. Mona took me to one side, put me under her wing, shared a dressing room with her. And you just drop these little things, how to stand on a stage, what not to do, when to do it, how to get a laugh, all the technical things that you should know, but you don't because you've never done them, you've never had the chance to do them. And the offstage things, she said to me, don't expect your career to be like your white friends. Down that road lies madness. Do whatever job you get and do it to the best of your ability, fully commit to it. And you will get more work from your performances. And the other thing she said to me is, always have a good coat. Hello.
I've got a good coat, yeah.
You have, good. Always, that's all right. Always have a good coat, she says, because you walk into an audition room and you look great because you've got a great coat on. You could have on any old tat underneath, but the first impression is, oh, she must be doing well. So that's the subliminal thing. Consequently, I've got about 20 coats. I've got no clothes, but a lot of coats.
It's interesting because about 20 years ago, the National Portrait Gallery did an exhibition of black stars, black actors. I think Rudolph, you were part of that.
Yes, he was. Yeah. It was Fraser
James
who
was
put it
involved.
together, yeah.
Delroy Linda was part of it.
Harewood,
All of these large
Harewood.
photos had a little motto or emblem at the bottom of them. People said things like, to be an actor, to survive, you must work hard and be disciplined, you must do this and that. But yours said, Donna, interestingly, my ambition is not to go mad.
What you getting at, Burt?
No, because you mentioned what Mona had said to you, so
Yeah.
you must have taken that on in quite a profound way.
Well, it's not just that. These portraits, they're called the Peckham portraits, because they were in the National Gallery and then they put them outside the library in Peckham.
That's right.
And now I think they're outside the drama school that's there. Someone said, talent without something is just luck.
Talent without opportunity.
Yeah, can't remember. Anyhow, mine was, my ambition is not to go mad. And it comes from being interviewed. People saying to me, well, what do you want to do? What part do you want? As if there is a part that I'm aiming for and I'm working to get there. And I said, I don't know, quite flippantly, listen, my ambition is not to go mad. That's my ambition. And I think it comes from the fact that I've seen so many people have mental health problems in the business. I've seen it, and it's terrifying because if you don't have your mental health, you really have nothing, you know. So I thought if I can just keep sane, I might be able to get through and work.
And who were the other people you admired? Who were the other actors or people in the profession? People who gave you a sense of possibility?
Well, apart from Mona and Carmen and Rudolph. Carmen Monroe, I beg your pardon. Dame Carmen Monroe! Apart from these people have often said, you know, who are your heroines, who inspired you? I really wasn't inspired by anybody else except those women, because they're treading the same path as me. You know, the other women are on a different path. This is the path I'm treading, it's the same as theirs. I will look to them and take their advice and follow their footsteps. Those were my mentors.
And you
but
know,
my inspiration now comes from all the black women I see who I support and they support me.
Yes.
And whenever anyone's doing a show, wherever it is, we'll go and support each other, you know.
And I've heard many actors of colour, many female, who have said when they face the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune that this profession can bring up, they say, what would Dona Croll do? So you're carrying forward a kind of inheritance, a kind of history.
Oh, that's good.
And for a long time, that history was very much orally transmitted, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You remember, like, even back to the 80s, or maybe early 90s, we knew every actor of color, Chinese, South
Yes,
Asian,
we
wherever.
did, yeah.
Now the demographic has changed. There's a whole kind of exponential expansion. And on top of that, people are consumed with their media, their online media. They've lost the oral transposition of history and of stories. They don't know who Norman Beaton was, many of them. They don't know who Mona Hammond, what she represents.
Oh, she's got a good response in this room. But I went to the Brixton House Theatre just to have a look around, and I was talking to some lovely young man who was the production manager. He was very, very proud to tell me he was the first mixed race or black person of colour production person in a theatre in the country. And I said, well, that's very nice. Yeah. And I said, how many auditoria do you have here? And he said, however, I said, lovely. And I said, how many rooms are good? And I said, well, you could call one of the rooms the Norman Beaton room, like the James Baldwin room is at the Tricycle. Exactly. And the boy said, who's Norman Beaton? I really wanted to wring his neck, but I was very calm. I said, well, did you ever watch Desmond? He said, I almost did that. Did you ever watch Desmond? He said, yes. I said, that's Norman Beaton. Oh, yeah, I've seen him. Yeah. And I had no idea of the work that Norman had done. I think he used to drink in that pub there, and he used to live round the corner. You know, so it's perfect. And they still haven't done it, and I don't know why. It doesn't cost anything to just have the Norman Beaton room above a room.
I think historical amnesia is probably one of the biggest problems facing people of colour in the arts.
Yes, but I think that's something that everybody faces. I mean, I've been in dressing rooms in big theatres, and there's a huge poster, and it's Miss Fanny so-and-so in 1950. And she was a big star because her name is top of the thing. But we don't know who she is. It's very ephemeral acting. It's very...
But there are some people who deserve a kind of lauding, like Mona Hammond, like Norman Beaton,
Norman, yeah.
like Earl Cameron.
I bet that boy knew who Laurence Olivier was.
I bet you.
But again, Burt, we all know how our history in this country is erased and not celebrated. It's like people often I played Cleopatra with Talawa Theatre Company, and the amount of times people say, "Oh, you're Britain's first black Cleopatra. It's in the British Library that I'm Britain's," and I said, "Well, allegedly, as far as we know, because we don't know. I might not have been. You know what I mean?" I've seen billboard. I've seen reviews of a John Gay play called Polly in 17 blah blah, and the woman who played Polly is described as being very dusky, which is code for black.
Yeah, she was an African-Irish woman. Yes,
there you go. Yeah. There you go.
But talking of your performing, Donna, and coming back to linking to that thing of language and church and all that kind of spirituality, which it has to really come back to in the end. It's not just a job and show business. Have you had that experience, that marvelous kind of incarnation-like experience where you've got on stage, said your lines, done your moves, come off stage, and you can't remember being on stage?
Often. I've done that often. There was a play I did called Back to Methuselah, George Bernard Shaw. There is 3 plays. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. Part 1 is in the Garden of Eden, and Part 3 is 6,000 years hence.
Actually, Mona was in that play as well.
Wait, really?
At the, what's that theatre by Blackfriars? Just be the theatre.
The Mermaid?
The Mermaid, yes.
Oh, was she in that?
There's a photo of Mona in that play at the Mermaid. Is memory serving me right? Yeah. Sorry.
Wow, I didn't know that. What did she play? Do you know?
I just saw it's a photograph. I didn't see it.
I played the serpent in the first play, yeah. And I was born in the year of the snake, and I quite like snakes. In Cleopatra, I had a real snake for the poster. Lucy, her name was. But then we couldn't go on tour with a real snake, so I didn't get the snake. But why am I telling you
those moments of incarnation?
I played the snake. And this was in Back to Methuselah,
yes,
and I've not had reviews ever like I had for doing that part, and I can't remember because I just became a snake. I went to the zoo, I watched them, I watched how they breathed, how they moved, how still they kept, all of that. And it was a great...
And you'd go on stage, deliver that amazing...
Yeah, and come off and not remember anything.
Yes.
And Susan Brown said, I watched an actress fly every night, she said. And that's praise indeed.
You were a snake with wings.
That's right, yeah. Is it on a plane? I was a snake on a plane.
You mentioned, you say you couldn't take a live snake on tour for Cleopatra and Antony and Cleopatra.
Yeah.
Touring, Donna, in our career, certainly up to the 80s, early 90s, touring was such an important part of our grounding in the profession. Going to different towns outside London, different spaces, different audiences, black people with strange accents, north of the M25. Touring doesn't happen so much anymore. It's become but there's a so-called Waitrose tour.
Oh yes, yeah, the Waitrose tour, which is Malvern, Bath,
Brighton.
Brighton. I call it a Waitrose tour. I'll do those, but I'm not doing Wolverhampton.
Oh no, not now. But in those back in the day, those going to Preston and Blackpool and Edinburgh. Do you have fond memories of those days?
Yes, you were young, so yeah, it was great. Got your suitcase and off you went. And everybody seemed to manage to get together at Crewe for some reason. It's a big junction, Crewe. So you'd see people, hello darling, how are you? I'm good, where are you going this week? Oh, we're in Torquay, well good luck. We'd shout across the platforms at each other. So much has changed. We used to sign on. If you lived in North London, you signed on at Liston Grove. If you lived in South London, you signed on at...
Just nearby Channel 4.
Victoria.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Thatcher changed all of that. Why do actors have to sign on here? But it was great because we didn't have the web. We didn't have any mobile phones or social media. So you'd meet at the employment exchange. What's happening? Have you heard about any work? Because nobody in the Dole office, nobody who worked for the DHSS had heard of any work for actors. But the network was there.
But with the absence of that kind of troubadour-like touring, it goes back to the beginning of the theatre profession in a way.
Yeah.
Do you think the younger generation, they go straight into a Netflix series or they stay in London, do you think they might have lost something just a tad valuable by missing out on leaving London for a change?
Well, I think people do still leave London, and I think people do still tour. So I don't think, it's just that there's less of it because there's less money to get it in the provinces.
I suppose the companies there aren't there as well.
Yeah.
Black Theatre Cooperative, 784,
784.
Belt and Braces.
Yeah. What's the other one? Theatre of Black Women. There's all sorts of different companies in the 70s and 80s, and you could work and tour because they didn't have any permanent homes.
Whatever happened to these the black theatre movement?
Well, this is another question. Is there such a thing as black theatre?
It says here, yes.
That's your opinion. That's your opinion.
Black theatre, is it still real?
Don't look at me. I don't know.
But you know,
I think it is.
Isn't the kind of disappearance of what we knew back in the day as black theatre, isn't that a measure of how integrated we've become in British society?
Yes, I think so. Because black theatre existed as a sort of sideline. It wasn't in the mainstream, so to speak. There was a big conference they had, I think it was Sheffield or Manchester in the late 80s, where all the black writers and directors, there were no black people doing anything in theatre. There was no single black director of any of the main houses, any house in Britain. And I think it started to change when the Arts Council said, if you don't have a diversity, you can't get a grant. So that's when it started to integrate. Because the West End was a place that was a closed shop to us. we could never get into the West End. Burt was there in 85, 86 with Serious Money. And you went off to New York, and I went into Serious Money in 1980, whenever it was. And my friend Trevor Thomas said to me, "You do realise that you're the only black person in the West End who isn't singing and dancing?" And it was true. I hadn't noticed, because it was just normal. We could appear in musicals, but straight sort of good meaty acting roles we couldn't do.
But all
That's
along,
why I stopped singing.
all along, we all knew black theatre existed, but there is no such thing as black theatre. And it existed because of things like, you remember, up to the early 90s, when, for example, the RSC, one of the biggest employers of actors, wouldn't employ black people. And Peter Hall's famous saying, "But the blacks can't do Shakespeare. They have no experience." So we were kept out of being employed by the great
big houses.
Big houses, certainly with the RSC, with all its facilities.
Yeah, but
in fact, I remember, in 1980...
My show, Bert.
I want to give you...
but also kept out of working with really big experienced actors and learning from them. That, to me, that was the main thing. That was why that hindered us as well. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to throw to you. In 1980, when I first came to London, Cecily Berry, who was the great voice tutor at the RSC, someone I wish I'd worked with more. She, along with Walter Donahue, who was then the literary manager, ran a 2-week course at the then Donmar warehouse. We wanted to do something for black actors, because the RSC would not employ black people. So that's when I first met Nadia Cattouse, Earl Cameron, Muriel Denton, Hugh Corshey. We were all gathered for 2 weeks, and those 2 weeks working with Cecily Berry have kept me going for all these years in the profession. But Peter Hall's dictum, the blacks can't do Shakespeare, that is why black theatre had to exist, because there was a need and a vacuum which we had to fill to give ourselves work and employ.
But Cec Berry, when I worked at the RSC, she said, when I'm in New... She's about 90, and she was tiny and almost bent double. But Donna, when I'm in New York, I go to the rap clubs. They are the best speakers of verse on the planet, she said. I thought, I can imagine her going in a rap club and just not caring,
No,
so she understood.
But that skill, which was taken away from a lot of black actors, people don't realize the RSC, for example, only when Michael Boyd came in the 90s did they start employing black people to any degree.
To any degree, but they did have the odd film
people,
star.
yes.
Who was the film star who, Rudolph will know the story, turned up in his Rolls Royce, American, and stepped out in a white suit when all the actors are in tracksuits for rehearsal.
Oh, of course, I can see him now.
Yeah.
Tall.
Handsome, Rolls Royce, Can't remember his name. Calvin
He's from London. He's a Bahamian who lived in London for a while.
Yeah.
Donna, in your wide experience and with the longevity of it, directors have a power because they cast us, don't they? And we got to fit into their kind of their vision to a large degree. Tell us about your experience with directors, how they have taught you, how they've hindered you, how they've inspired you.
Wow. Directors are kind of megalomaniacs, really.
Benign.
Yeah. Although I think theatre basically is a collaboration in the way that filmmaking isn't. The director has his vision, the camera points there, and then there's the edit, But I think theatre is a collaboration, but the director may have ideas about what the set looks like, how he wants the actors to move. And what's happening more and more is that directors now are all vision but no substance. So you get a lot of shows that look great, but they haven't done the work in between. But one of my problems with white directors particularly is that because they have a preconceived idea of what a black woman should be, they will note you. They will tell you, this is what I'd like you to do. the worst one that comes to mind was Graham Murray at the Royal Exchange, Manchester. I'm playing Nerissa, who is like the girlfriend come handmaiden of Portia, who has the quality of mercy speech. And the first day of rehearsals, Graham Murray said to me, I think Nerissa is a bit older and wiser than Portia, and I think Portia gets a lot of that. And what I saw was, oh, Miss Portia! I thought, I'm not doing that. I didn't do it once. And the boys in the show had started a book on when was Donna going to get a note from the director. He couldn't give me any advice. He couldn't help me at all with the character, because Harriet and I, it was Dame Harriet Walter, we worked together and had a really nice relationship, which is so much more interesting than Miss Portia, that he didn't know what to do. So what I had to do to keep a relationship going with him, he's a Jewish man, I told him a nice Jewish joke every morning. And that's the only way we communicated, because he had nothing to say to me.
Well, that strength seems to go back to what you talked about, being in the very beginning, working with Sarah Peer Anderson, working in Hiawatha, where you as an actor discovered what your autonomy could be and how your service has to be to the character.
Yeah,
really.
Not to the director.
Not to the director, ultimately.
Bless him.
But that thing, that Aunt Jemima stereotype, I mean, it hangs over our profession, doesn't it? The history of black people in show business.
I think it hangs over women in general, because as a woman you either play the virgin or the whore. You know, just recently there's a lot of parts for women playing all sorts of queens and doing wonderful things. I mean, Viola Davis does the most wonderful parts. So does I've forgotten her name.
Angela Bassett.
Yes, Angela Bassett. Yes, they do wonderful things. But with white actors, Meryl Streep has blown that one out the water. But usually, I mean, traditionally, you're either the nice girl or you're the bad girl. There was nothing in between. And if you're a black woman, that's even worse. What's the film that Kathy Tyson did?
Mona Lisa?
Mona Lisa. That part, it was to play a prostitute, was the only part written for a black actress that year, 1980 MASH. The only part on film, on British film, was for a prostitute. And my agent said, oh, there's this, and I thought, I'm not doing it, I don't want to go up for it. I'm not saying there aren't black prostitutes, I'm saying there are black barristers, teachers, lawyers, judges, whatever. When I see those, then yes, I'm dying to play a bad girl. But if I don't see us playing the good girls, then it's a business, it's a representation. And I don't think I've ever played one of those parts. Because it would kill me to do it. I couldn't do it with a straight face.
And where does that, apart from the skill you've got, where else do you think? What other resources do you draw on for that kind of survival?
Well, there's always signing on. No. What do you mean by that?
Well, he says to me, you developed a certain taste. You developed a certain trust in yourself.
Yeah, I trust myself. I trust, and it's just to do with the amount of years I've been working. I trust myself, I trust my talent, I trust my taste. So there are things that might come up, and I'll try it, but my taste is saying no. Like when I was at the RSC the last time, and I was playing a servant along with Marty Cruikshank. And she's got a sort of accent, so I did the same accent. And the director said to me, I think perhaps you should have an accent. And I said, oh God, not Caribbean or African. That's such a cliche. Cut that off at the knees. Why am I doing a blooming accent? Because I'm a black woman. I sound too urban. What does that mean? I'm doing the same accent as Marty. Why do I sound urban but she not sound urban? You know what she did? The director got me a dialect coach, a white woman, to teach me how to do a Caribbean accent. And I bet she got paid more than me. But what I did was every now and again, I would open a vowel, like a posh Jamaican. You know, the uppers and downs. I'd do that every now and again. And the director says, "Are you doing the accent? I can't hear it." I said, "Yeah, I'm doing it. If she can't hear it, what the hell does she want it for?"
Are there directors, any directors who you would, in the midst of all that kind of struggle and resistance, who you learnt stuff from, who you admire? Anyone you want to give a big shout to?
I will big up Bill Gaskell. Marsha Miller's in the house. We did a play at the Lyric Hammersmith, a restoration comedy, called The Relapse with Simon Callow, who is has anybody worked with Simon? Oh, you have. I love him to
He's
death.
opera, isn't he? He's pure
He does
opera.
opera now, yeah. But he's terribly his emails begin, "Gentlemen," you know, it's that. And and he was playing the fop, and he arrived on the first day of rehearsals perfectly, writing and reading it all very well. And I couldn't even read it, because the language was beyond me. I'd never done that language. I hadn't done elevated language yet. And Bill Gaskell, Marsha will back me up, Bill Gaskell taught us how to use this language, how to use our breath through the line, and how to get the energy of the breath and the line to the end. And I'd never had that training. So Bill Gaskell, I will big him up every time.
Give me an example of a line.
"My dear Amanda, I did not expect to meet with you in town. My dear Amanda, I did not expect to meet with you in town." How to stress the verb, lift it up, keep going with that.
He was a brilliant teacher.
He was a brilliant teacher. He was a brilliant teacher. I'll big him up every day.
Any other directors? Anyone else?
Who are you thinking of?
Max Stafford Clark.
Max Stafford Clark at the Royal Court, yeah. Max had does everybody... No. Max Stafford Clark had a way of actioning a script, and I'd never done that before. And that I use sometimes as well. That's worth using. Not all the time, but sometimes it's useful.
He's very good at giving you like psychological guy ropes to hold
Your
the line
character
down,
down,
but then you
yeah.
can fly knowing that you're secure with those
Yeah.
ropes tying you there.
It's good.
Donna, you're...
And there's another director I want to big up. Her name is Caroline Smith. She used to run the Contact Theatre Manchester, and it was one of my first sort of scripted plays. And we did The Crucible, and I played Tituba. And she also used to do all of Alan Bleasdale's early plays. Alan Bleasdale, who wrote Boys from the Black Stuff. And I was doing one of his plays at Oldham. It was called The Party's Over. It was set in a sort of girls' borstal, an approved school for girls. And he and I got on very well. I said to him, what are you doing next, Alan? I was looking for a job, you see, actors, always looking for a job. He said, well, I've done this thing called The Boys from the Black Stuff, you know. I said, well, what's in it for me? Well, I didn't know you then, Donna. I didn't write anything. I said, well, bloody write something. And you know, a few weeks later, I got a script. I've still got it in a box in the garage. It says, at the top of this page, it says, patient in surgery with doctor. Patient is black and preferably Dona Croll. Because usually, when you get a script from the BBC, it says the sending of this script does not constitute any sort of And what happened, it was in Yossa's story, episode 4, and he'd got Yossa going to all these children's homes to look for his kids. And the BBC said too many locations. So he wrote a scene where Yossa comes in and says, I've been here, I've been there, where are my kids? And I'm sitting there, and I wanted to play it as a sort of Liverpudlian Rasta, you know. And I said, hey, do you mind? It's taken me 10 minutes to get here, and you only get 15 minutes anyway, or something. And that was written specifically for me. And the other thing Bleasdale did, he got me up to do that 6 lines 3 times with 3 different contracts. So I got paid every time. 3 times. You get these stalwarts every now and again. People who just give you a little whoop. Michael Rosen is another one. I did a TV series with Michael Rosen, a children's series called Black and White and Red All Over, about children's books, and I got paid £7,000 for a week's work. That doesn't happen now. You guys know this. You don't get £7,000 a week. But because I think he's a socialist, and the budget was 14,000 for the production, so he said, well, of course, and he split it.
And in a way, those individuals are in line with those liberal imperialists who taught your mother poetry. But that's another story. Donna.
Liberal imperialist. He likes that.
Donna, thank God we're having this conversation this week, because if it was last week, we'd all have to come to your front room and in between the serves of Wimbledon engage with you. Yeah. You would not have left your sofa.
No.
Tell us about your everyday enthusiasm. Some of your other everyday
Did you get there, Grace? Did you
enthusiasm.
get to Wimbledon? No. Ah, what a shame. I used to go to Wimbledon every second Tuesday because I had a boyfriend who did the gardens for the chairman of the All England Lawn Tennis and Croquet Club. So I had to get dressed up in a frock. He had to wear a blazer. And we'd sit just to the right of the royal box. So there was none of this going on. We could just watch the tennis. And I love tennis. It's the only sport I will go out of my way to watch and to participate in. I think it's an all-round thing. It's like chess, like how cricket has chess, you know. Knowing your strengths, playing to their weaknesses, and the skill of getting that ball over the net. I think it's wonderful.
And no script, totally improvised.
Yeah.
What other enthusiasm do you have? I mean, do you watch a lot of TV, for example?
No, not really. I try and watch one episode of everything just to go,
see who's working.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just to say, this is interesting, this is new, this is different. And I might watch 2 episodes. Like I watched the first episode of Bridgerton. I thought, it looks great. The costumes look fabulous, but the storyline is the same as Pride and Prejudice, really. So, yeah, it's nice. But I tell you what I have watched, Black Mirror. It's scary. And I watched Chaos. Did you see that? Did anybody see that?
I've heard of it.
Man, it's the Greek myths brought up to date. So Orpheus is a pop star. And then they go into the underworld. The underworld is all shot in black and white. Zeus is Jeff Goldblum. And he has all the things that gods have. He's insecure, he's petty, he's spiteful, you know.
Great part.
He's great, and it's Jeff Goldblum. What's not to love? But it's all the Greek myths put into this fabulous. Why they didn't do another season?
I'm going to ask you a question which is going to open up a whole heap of
Worms.
Juices, shall we say.
All right.
Tell me, what was your highest ever number on a call sheet as an actor?
Number 1.
And what was that for?
That was for Jean's film, Hallelujah Anyhow.
Jean Binter Breeze.
Jean Binter Breeze.
Your cousin.
My cousin. Yeah. Well, I didn't know she was my cousin. I'd met her a couple of times. She'd come to England. She was doing a little bit of this and that. And I went for this film, and I got the part, and Jean had written it, and it's to play a preacher. She has a husband, and she gets a lover, but she's the preacher. It's the number 1 on the call sheet. And it's the only time, people say to me, what's your favourite bit of that film? The opening is me walking through a market. So you see the back of my head.
Brixton Market?
No, it's not. It's the market up at Islington somewhere. I think it is, yeah. And so you see me walking through the market, morning, blah, blah. And then the camera goes up to a nice blue sky. and it says Dona Croll in. What's your favourite bit of that film? That bit. And while we were filming that, Jean was a very eventful film. I got beaten up by a boyfriend. Jean, who was like sort of 9.5 months pregnant with who is now my goddaughter, Karib. But we were doing the bed scene with Keith David, and we'd lit it and all the rest. And we're lying down there doing all the lighting. And Jean said, Donna, where you come from? I said, Jean, you'd never have heard of it. It's a tiny little village up in the hills of Hanover called Patty Hill. And Jean went, Clart. That's one of her favourite words. That's where me come from. What? How two little girls from Patty Hill end up on a film set?
On a bed.
On a bed it was the hotel at Bayswater. We could not believe it. So she phoned her mother, and Aunt Vida, who was like the sage, the griot of the family, lived with them. And it turned out that my maternal grandfather and Jean's maternal grandfather were first cousins. So we were like third cousins, twice removed or something. But I was the nearest thing that Jean had to family in England. So then we were just cousins. But it was Jean Binter Breeze who put me number one on a call sheet for the one time in my life. So big up Jean. I miss her so much. I miss her. When I'm in Jamaica, I miss her.
How am I doing for
Did
time?
you have somebody to go like that?
You have time,
Yeah.
Another 10 minutes.
One of Jean,
Tell me when you get bored.
one of Jean's great enthusiasms was cricket.
Yeah.
And isn't it a shame when you think of the West Indies team, the decline, when you think of the peak, the Himalayan peak we reached in the 80s and 90s to where it is now.
Well, that's
What
life.
do you
isn't
think?
it?
What do you think is going on? What do you think is going on in the West Indies?
Probably money, and everybody's playing something that pays more money. Isn't that what happens with sports?
But it's also some spirit, something about the spirit of the people. I mean, you think of Viv Richards, you think of Kirtley, you think of Brian Lara.
I did a play with Sharon Duncan Brewster and Ashley, and it was about cricket. It was Roy Williams'. I think it was his
his
first
mother,
play.
based on his second.
His second.
His
play.
first stage play.
His first stage play.
He done some radio
and it
before.
was called the No Boys Cricket Club. And were you there the day we had to go to Lord's to practice in the nets? Do you remember? We had to practice, and Brian Lara was there.
Oh.
Yes, so hear me, hi Brian! Like we are quabs. And he was very gentle, he said, oh hello. He was very nice to us. And he was there launching his, I think it was some sort of computer game, a cricket computer game. But no man, talk to the cricketers, because I think they're a great part of our life here in England. What they did for us when they were at their peak is really remarkable.
Were you also in Nine Night, Edgar White's play, which had a cricket, with a cricket, with T-Bone and Jason Rose, and has a cricket scene in it, isn't it? A brilliant cricket scene.
It's a speech he makes about cricket. Oh my goodness, it's fabulous.
Edgar White is one of the great lost poets of what used to be called Black Theatre. Check out his plays, I think, available at the British Library.
Can you say a little bit about him?
He was from Montserrat.
Yes.
Canada, originally from Montserrat, lived in Canada. And he was a great poet of the theatre. I mean, his play, Redemption Song, one of the most amazing.
I think Jean did that. Did she do it as part of the Black Theatre season at the Arts Theatre?
No, it was done at Riverside Studios with a great cast, including Victor. Victor was in it. Victor had a scene where he had to eat a mango every night.
Victor Romero.
Victor Romero Evans, sorry. Victor Romero Evans had to eat a ripe mango every night. But the theatre just didn't even sort of take him on. They just spat him out. And he ended up sort of in the margins. He's now back in Montserrat as a living as a recluse. But,
I remember him from the Cascade. I mean, in our conversation so far, we have mentioned the Cascade. Were you aware of the Cascade?
Yes,
because
of course.
At that time, I used to work there as a librarian, and at that time, that was the home of black theatre in Britain.
That's right. Yeah. Who was running it? Was it
Rufus
Collins?
Rufus Collins
Oscar.
was the director, but the person who ran it was Oscar Abrahams.
Oscar Abrahams.
From Guyana.
Yeah. Did he then also have the Roundhouse? Was he the one who was given the Roundhouse to run?
No.
But again,
But
set up.
the Cascade, the unique thing about the Cascade is that you would see plays written by Caribbean playwrights, African playwrights, with African and Caribbean cast.
And directors.
And directors.
Yeah.
Well, Rufus was African American.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
But again, filling that void, we'd been excluded from the mainstream theatre, and we needed to do our plays in our language and play to the kind of audiences who would understand
And
what we are
apparently
doing.
that was happening before I even came to England, with someone called Edric and Pearl Connor,
yeah.
Black Theatre Workshop. Do you know anything
Well,
about
it was
Pearl was an agent.
Negro Theatre Workshop.
The Negro Theatre Workshop, and there's also Dark and Light Theatre
That
with
came
the
after, yeah.
amazing
I
Frank
remember
Cousins. Yes.
Frank Cousins, around the back of Brixton.
Yes, yeah.
It was there. But I think because maybe now we're so into... Now, I think there's only Talawa left. As a black theatre company, yeah. And it does specifically black writing.
But also,
and it develops black writers.
You talked about integration as something maybe negative. Integration, there's nothing wrong with it. What is wrong?
I didn't say anything negative.
Sorry, Denton.
I said, was it a measure of the fact that we have become more integrated than
that
we
there
were
is
back
less
then?
pure
Well,
black theatre?
I was countering by saying, would you agree, Donna? Integration is not the problem. Assimilation is what we should avoid. We should never give up what we are and what we know. But of course, because Europe, Africa, and the New World, Americas, are all part of us, we are integrated. We are plural people from the Caribbean, I mean, India, Africa is all in us. I mean, when a Trinidadian says he likes roti, where do you think roti come from? When we talk about curry goat, where do you think curry goat come from? I mean,
India.
But it's Caribbean. Indian curry goat and Indian roti is not the same as
a
Caribbean roti.
But I went to a Cuban restaurant in Spain and they didn't have any curry goat. Cuba is this far from Jamaica. Because they got no Indians.
No Indians went there. Yes.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, we have that plural element which we should not abjure or eschew. So integration is integrating is nothing wrong with it. It's assimilation when we lose our sense of being. I'm going to now open it where you can now hand your flowers as you wish to Donna. But I would also like you, if you can, to at least have a question as a postscript, just so Donna.
And be brief.
As Mr. Johnson says, brief in your bouquets rather than big gardens. Yeah. But with a question, if you can, please. I'm going to stand up.
I've got a question. What would make your perfect day?
What would make my perfect
everyone hear
day?
that question?
Yes.
What would make my perfect day? I've had many perfect days, and they usually start when I get up in Jamaica, I wander onto the veranda, and I watch the little bit of fog which is above the rivers over Hanover, and I watch the sun burn the fog away, and then I go around the garden and pick whatever fruit is available, and then I come back to my veranda and I drink my coffee, and then a friend comes maybe and we drive out to the seaside and go and have lunch, or up a mountain and go and have lunch, wherever I am in Jamaica. And then I come back, and of course the heat has exhausted me, so I have a nice rum punch and go to bed.
But do you have a perfect day in Brixton, I wonder?
Yeah, and perfect day in Brixton with you drinking soup.
Hassan.
In your interest, can you say your name?
Yes, my name
In the interest of transparency and fellowship, yes?
My name is Hassan Aliyu. I'm an artist and I've known Dona Croll.
I've got one of your paintings,
That's right.
beaten. Norman gave it me for my birthday.
And he's a trustee of
198. Okay.
And I was telling my colleague who I brought along for this event
Yes.
that Norman lived here because we parked right outside Norman's house on Milkwood Road.
That's right.
And I said I expected to see a blue plaque.
Ah,
So-
there isn't one.
No, there isn't.
Well, Nubian Jack should have sorted that out. They've got one for Choice FM.
So it brought me thinking about how would you like to be remembered? Does blue flag mean anything to you?
Well, I don't see why I should be remembered. Well, I mean,
But you've been immortalized in film.
many times. That's
television.
enough. That's enough. How I'd like to be remembered is she knew how to throw a party. That'll do.
Can you give us your name just for...
Oh,
Curtis Walker.
hello,
Of
Kurt.
course.
Very cliche question. What would you,
Yeah.
as this phenomenal woman you are,
Oh, bless you.
what advice would you give your younger self, 17-year-old Dona Croll, what advice would you give her in this minefield of the industry that we're in, or you're in?
Wow.
What advice would you give her?
I would say never turn down an opportunity. There was one opportunity, and it still haunts me 40 odd years later. When I was at drama school in Birmingham, we used to go to Pebble Mill. The BBC would ring us up and could you come and do some extra work on Angels or whatever play they were doing in the studio. And we used to go and it was great because we didn't have a studio in our drama school. So we could get to live in a studio, how it works, the makeup room, where the lights are, where the cameras are, all of that. And the day I left drama school, they rang me and said, would you come and do some extra work? And I said, no, I'm an actor now. I don't. And then the following week, they rang and said, we're doing a new series called Rock Follies. And we would like a black singer in the group. I said, I don't sing, and put the phone down. Bond me to this deal. Why? Of course I can sing. If you've got a church, you can sing, you can harmonise, you can hold a harmony. But there's me thinking I'm too posh to sing. I'm going to do this. I'm going to... Stupid. That's the advice I would give myself.
Lady in the front here?
Hi, I'm Ariana.
Hello, Ariana.
My question is, who is your favourite tennis player at the moment?
Ah!
I'm a big tennis fan. I went to Wimbledon on Tuesday.
Did you?
I agree, it's the only sport that I actually play with my dad.
Well,
You beat him, eh?
Absolutely. Although he is actually quite good, I can't lie.
okay. I think my favourite tennis player at the moment is Alcaraz.
Really?
Yeah.
He did lose.
Yeah, I don't care. He's impossible to coach.
Yeah.
All those drop shots, they might work, they might not, but he's having a good time and he smiles. He smiles if he wins, he smiles if he loses. He's had a good time. I don't bother watching women's tennis anymore because since Serena and Venus aren't playing, it's pretty boring.
Coco Golf is like...
If Coco's playing, I'll watch. Yeah. And also Hayley Baptiste, I'll watch, and the new girl, Victoria Mboko, I'll watch.
Yes.
But really, all the overs and the itches, I'm like, get over your itching selves. This is Ray Shell, everybody, another old fest. Ray and I played his wife.
I was about to say that.
Okay.
I had the honor of playing her husband and all my sons with Talawa. And Donna had this amazing entrance. And I don't know if you remember, she would come out the door of the house and then go to what was supposed to be a rose bush
Yeah.
and gather some roses and smell them. And like, I always watched her because it was almost as if it was electricity. And I could smell what she was smelling. My question is, what were you thinking about when you
I
did
can't remember doing it.
I watched her every night. She would go and pick it up, and then you had your line. And the line had nothing to do with the flowers. But the thing about it was, I could smell what you were smelling.
I can't remember that.
Make it up.
What I remember with that play specifically, I spent the last 15 minutes crying.
Yeah.
It was, the end of that play is really sad.
And the guy who played our son hated me.
Yeah, and you hated him.
I didn't hate him. I was in grief. My mama had just died. I hated everybody.
I must say, that play, All My Sons by Arthur Miller, Marianne Jean-Baptiste is coming to do it later in the year. So that's a must see. And Arthur Miller, I've done The Crucible, and I've done All My Sons. He's one of those playwrights that directors can't mess about with. That they're constructed really carefully, and I love doing the work.
When you remember, let me know.
Okay.
Before the next question, Donna, you mentioned Marianne the Great, Marianne Jean-Baptiste, who had to go to America to find any kind of success. Did you ever flirt with that idea? What do you think of that phenomenon where so many actors, talented actors, could not find the opportunity in this sceptered isle and had to go to America in order to thrive?
Well, the industry is bigger in America, and they had a quota system, which we still haven't implemented here. And what I can say is that the only black actor I know in England who's had a little piece of success without going to America, I mean, he's almost like a David Tennant or a Ben Cumberbatch. He will get there, is Papa Essiedu. He hasn't gone to America, and he's coming through. But it's a bit like going to the other plantation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to go to that plantation. And you're an American.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've come to this plantation. And whichever plantation you're on, you're better than the ones here.
Well, it's weird when I first come here. It was like being exotic and stuff. And I was one of those people that was singing and dancing in the West End.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't go to school to be a musical theater, so I only sang because my daddy was a preacher and I had to sing.
Yeah.
So I didn't study that. I wanted to play Hamlet and all other people. But now I sang.
Sing.
Sang.
But yeah, when I go to America, I get told that you're not like these people. You speak better. And I say, well, actually, I am just like these people. You know, but whichever plantation you're on, if you go to the other one, you're better than the ones that they've got there. And it seems it's ridiculous.
You get fewer lashings. Is there an armour is at the back? Yes. Right at the back? Yes, your mask? Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm the late one. No, name Variety.
Yeah.
Stand-up comedian. Here's a good question. What do I do? What do I
Kindly say to my black friends who I've been along with since I was a kid here in South London, who don't want to come with me to places like Knightsbridge, but want to stay in Nats Hill, but they still want me to go and like connect them.
Connect them with what?
With the higher ups in the industry, but they're too lazy to go with me.
You say no. You say, I'm sorry, here's the email address, here's the phone number. You can bring a horse to water, but the horse has to want to go to the water, and the horse has to want to drink. The horse wants to drink without going to the water. Right, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. You just say, I'm sorry. Give what information you can, and then you leave that with them. You can't be responsible for other people's careers. Damn, life is hard enough.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Barbara.
Okay. Just going to say, well done.
Thank you.
Really admire what you've achieved. Do you have a particular role model, male or female, apart from your mum?
Did everyone hear the question?
Ah.
Barbara's asked, does Donna have a particular role model apart from her mum?
My parents, well, particularly my mother. I don't really, because my mother has formed me, has shaped me in her image. And sometimes my daughter points it out to me that my default setting is disdain. All right. When we were little, and the phone was put in the house, we had a phone, and the phone would ring, but my mother wouldn't answer it. Mum, the phone's ringing. We would always run. She's not answering the phone. I said, Mum, why do you answer the phone? She said, only servants respond to bells. That tells you everything you need to know about how my mother was brought up, and that's some of that has rubbed off on me. The confidence that says, I am somebody in the world, this I will take, but that I will not take. I don't have to live with it. And that's how I've made my way through through the profession as well. That knowing what you will put up with and that which you will not put up with. I just ended that sentence with a conjunction. I get told off for that.
Any other questions? Anyone else wants to offer flowers to the remarkable Dona Croll?
Oh,
Donna, a wonderful evening.
thank you. This is Dawn Hill, everybody. Is it Day yet?
The original chair of the Black Cultural Archives in Brixton.
Yeah, the original chair. And she spent many years.
40 years.
40 years getting that building set up.
Now my picture is in
Windsor
the
Square.
square.
Oh,
Yes, it's been quite long. Wonderful. I always think I would never give my story because it isn't like the story you get generally about coming to England and you're leaving your sisters and whatever, and you're going somewhere you have no idea about, and all these problems. And I thought I didn't want to do it. So I did it, and I was the Small Island. Remember I did it, Small Island?
Oh, Small Island, yeah.
And Jacqueline McKenzie says, you always remind me of that girl, you know. She's got, she won't
Well,
put up
tense.
with this, and she won't put up with that.
Yeah.
So I listened to the 10-minute thing that's attached to all these portraits, and I thought, my God, did I say all this? And but growing up, my mother died when I was 14, and my father when I was 12. But then I went to live with my uncle and aunt, who were very rich, and I never did anything. I never had to do anything.
Yeah.
And so I understand your background.
Yeah.
Because living with my aunt was like a finishing school. Literally a finishing school.
Yeah.
So when I've done this 10-minute talk online that you can all please listen to it. What I said at the end, I don't believe I said it, but I obviously said it. I said, you know, all this race business that everybody's going on about. I said, you know, I was brought up seeing black people in acting. Antony and Cleopatra would come from Russia and dance in Jamaica. We saw all people, we saw ballet, we saw everything with, in Jamaica, with people of color, all kinds of colors, not just people with grey hair. She said, I said people with white hair and old. That's what the people that went to the theatre in England, and she wanted to do something about it. I wanted to do something about that, which I did.
Yeah.
Because there's Chichi, there's all these people that easily having tea with the king. They all started on the stage from the Black Cultural Archives.
Yeah.
Know about music, look at my father's opera, I want to play the piano, and all that sort of stuff. So it's actually quite good. I couldn't believe it.
Well done.
Is there a question? Would you like to ask Donna anything? No, Dawn Hill was just recounting her similarities growing up in Jamaica to Donna's background there, especially the fact that in all aspects of society, seeing people of color, seeing black people in ballet, in theatre, in the law, in the opera, judges, criminals, policemen, stevedores, all black.
Stevedores.
Any other questions from anyone? Yes.
Quick one. Hi Donna, Eva Fontaine.
Hello.
Obviously you've achieved so much in your career. Do you still have a wish list, and if so, what would be next on it?
Oh, I don't have a wish list.
You don't?
No, I've never had a wish list.
Someone you'd like to work with, or kind of project you'd like to do?
No. Down that road lies madness. Whatever comes along, I do it to the best of my ability. In the 80s, I wrote to, I think it was either Salisbury or Chichester, one of these theatre companies, and they were doing a production of Midsummer Night's Dream, and I hadn't done any Shakespeare yet, and I said, oh, well, hello, blah, blah, my name is, and wrote a letter. They didn't even have casting directors in those days. And I said, I know you're doing Midsummer Night's Dream, could I please be considered for Titania? And the letter came back and said, thank you for your inquiry, and I'm sorry, but we're doing the production straight. Straight. I thought, oh, I don't know. I knew what that meant, so I thought, okay. So, but if I'd had a burning ambition to play Titania, I still haven't played it. Cassie McFarlane has. She played it at Leeds, I think, or somewhere. Yeah.
Would anyone else like to offer flowers? The gentleman on my left, Mr. Linton.
No,
Mr.
just a
Johnson.
question. Who, if any, are the young up-and-coming black playwrights in this country today?
Wow. When you say young,
I mean, like under 40.
oh, well, I don't really know them because I'm sort of semi-retired. I go away every winter, but there is the Alfred Fagan Awards, which people they send in plays and some of them have been produced, and they've had other productions of the plays and new plays. So there is a sort of bubbling. It's hard because you don't get paid while you're writing, and so you have to work and write, and it's really difficult. But they are there. Just I don't know any. Do you know any?
I could
of them?
offer one name. I'd offer is Inua Illums, who is superb and masterful playwright. Yes, Debbie Tucker Green as well. But Inua Illums is particularly wonderful. His version of Three Sisters set in Nigeria during the Civil War was extraordinary. His Barbershop Chronicles,
yes,
I think it's online.
Yeah,
that's also extraordinary.
Yeah.
And in fact, he won the Alfred Fagan Award recently for a play about the 18th century in West Africa, when the European enslavers were coming to barter, or what the Portuguese called a palaver, we now use the word palaver, the negotiation between the middlemen, African middlemen, and the enslavers. He's written a play about that, which is still in development, so look out for that. Inua Illums. And Debbie Tucker Green.
Debbie Tucker Green.
But she's over 40.
Natasha Gordon, yeah. Natasha Gordon wrote 9 Nights, and of course... I didn't realise you were there!
She was in the Nobles Cricket Club, she took over. That was an extra though.
Were you?
Yeah. They were young, yeah.
She must have been about 2. It was a long time ago.
A long time ago. So,
Anyone else with an inquiry or offering of some flowers? Yes, it's a professor.
I wondered if you talk about your experience playing Anastasia in
Elmina's Kitchen, Kwame. Yeah.
It was a landmark, whatever happened subsequently.
Yeah.
It did something in the theatre, that play.
Yes, it did. Kwame wrote, well, that was his 3rd play. Kwame Amar. He wrote, this was his 3rd play, and it was the 2nd time he'd written a part for me. How blessed am I? And it was at the National Theatre with George Harris, myself, Oscar James. I can remember George saying, Donna, we're batting at Lords and we got the best pitch. And I thought, oh, cricket again. I was the only woman in that play. I had such a good time with those. But I think it did something, because I think it was the first time that Kwame had a play on at the National. And then it went on a little tour, and it went into the West End. So that was the 2nd time I was in the West End with Kwame's play. But there was a time around the early 2000s where there were quite a few black playwrights coming through with new ideas and new plays, and Kwame was one of them. The same year, it was The Big Life. The
Stratford
musical
East,
at
yeah.
Stratford East, yeah. But Stratford East, the tricycle, now called something else. Stratford East, the kiln, and those are the only...
Only 2?
There's another one as well, the Young Vic.
Not really.
What do you know about the Oval?
The Oval House.
Oval House,
Yeah,
yeah.
but these theatres, you saw black plays and black actors at those theatres.
And black audiences.
And black audiences, yeah. There was a play that by Oladipo Agbolúwàjí. I will say his full name because it took me 2 weeks to learn how to say it. Oladipo Agbolúwàjí. And he did a play, I can't remember what it was called, but Ellen Thomas was in it at the Soho Theatre, and they didn't know what to do with the play. They were frightened that nobody would come and see it because it was a black play with all black people, black cast. And because of Ellen, they put Ellen on the poster. Well, everyone knows Ellen's face. So there was a queue around the block to see this play. They had to extend the running period of it. The next time, but they liked him now. Can you do another play? So we did another play. Me, Jimmy Akimbola, what that lovely actor who did The Phone Shop, Javon Prince, Tasha, can't remember her name. Anyway, and were you in it, Sharon?
I do think I might have done the workshop maybe or something.
Okay. But it was called The Christ of Cold Harbour Lane, and the poster had a Union Jack on it. Nobody came to see it. Marketing is key. You know, put one of us on the poster and people will come and see us, but nonsense. Anything else?
Don't you think it's wonderful that you could go to the West End these days and see a black musical like The Harder They Come or Bob Marley musical or Temptations or whatever?
Well, I think
compared to what was available when we were young.
We had lots of musicals in the West End that black people were in. But there were no straight plays that we were in. Now every play has at least one black actor, if not two. Every single theatre you go past. I've noticed that particularly since George Floyd died. That's one of the theatre had to have a real good look at itself. Because even the Bob Marley musical, Kwame had written one, which was on at Birmingham-raised. Ellen Thomas and I went up to see it, loved it. When it was time to put a show like that in the West End, they got Lee, the guy who wrote the ballet about the boy in the ballet. Lee Hall. They got him to write it, and the director was white. And all of the backers, all the money people were white. I read the script and I thought, I can't back this. Well, Kwame's one was too political.
Were you going to invest money?
Yeah, I was. But Kwame's one was too political. What was Bob Marley if not political? But they wouldn't have it. But when George Floyd died, they went, oh, maybe this is a bit off. So then they got Clint Dyer to direct it. And that happens, it's sort of, retrospective all the time. But at least they did it. And it was a great show.
Yes, sir?
Yeah, what was your experience like working on the Desmond cast?
It's great. That was 86, 87. I'd just come out of Serious Money. And I got a part in Desmond. One of these strange parts where this woman with a nice weave and breasts and everything suddenly took a shine to Desmond. I can't remember her name, but it was a fun set. Everybody was happy, and so the work was good because people are happy.
Was mainly a black crew
There were some black crew because Paulette worked on it, and she made sure.
That's Paulette Randall.
Paulette, sorry, we keep using Christian names. And this is Beverly Randall, who is Paulette's sister. The first one of these I came to, one of these chats, was Paulette.
Yes.
And I missed Annie's because I was away somewhere. And did you have somebody else?
That wasn't me, that was my wife, Shamila.
Okay. Well, thank you, Clinton, for having me here.
Well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Lord. Ben Shelton. Love him. Bye-bye, darling. Bye-bye, Judy. Love him.
Are you doing closing remarks, Linda?
My only closing remark is that it has been a pleasure having you both here, and sitting here listening to you both. I have learned something about the experiences of black actors in their struggle to break away from the margin and to arrive at the center.
Oh, very well put. Thank you. My glasses, thank you.
Well, I'm not going to judge it.
Oh, really? Thank you.
Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you.